Do you know, maybe the only saving grace from the opening round of Group E in the Europa Conference League is that Alkmaar went away and blew a 3-goal lead, losing 4-3 to Mostar. And most observers, I think, would say that Villa and Alkmaar are the favorites to win the group, but that's become an awful lot more complicated now. And I'm not the kind of guy that just likes to say, well, Villa was poor today. I need to dive into the specifics, the nitty-gritty reasons, and show examples of why we were so abject in Poland. So let's get into it. Legia 3, Aston Villa 2. Villa's last European adventure in Poland was 1977, and I really enjoyed watching all the lead-up videos from supporters as they were getting ready to go to the ground, and I think that's why this is such a disappointment, is because of all the anticipation. It's not a short trip either, and we wanted to set a better tone in the first game of the group stage. And you know, 1982 keeps getting farther and farther in the rear view mirror, but I honestly do feel like our owners and our hierarchy are sincere in their desire to try to get us back to that level of glory. And you know, this show's Villa Mad sponsor, Paul Hansaker, 24/7 Services, was in Rotterdam in 1982, a front row seat to watch our European glory. And even as a 14-year-old, you still remember every single detail, Paul. What do you remember the most? Was it the goal?
When we actually scored, and was right behind the goal when Peter put the ball off his shin into the net. But the joy, honestly, the joy, I can't express it. Apart from probably my kids being born, there's nothing better than that day. Nothing better. It was absolutely brilliant, and a memory that sticks with me. I'm just hoping that one day, and especially with the new manager and the progression I think we're going to make, that one day they'll live that dream that I've had. But fingers crossed.
Paul's been a very busy guy lately because of the remnants of the hurricane, which has brought weather to England, of course. Now, if you have emergencies, roof issues, windows blowing out, any of that kind of stuff, I always put the phone numbers in the description of this video just so you have them handy. I'd like to welcome you officially from the Parlour here in Canada, where fall has arrived, to the Holy Trinity show named after the Trinity Road stand of the olden days. These are the three key issues or moments that defined Legia 3, Aston Villa 2, and we'll start with the key numbers. And on this day, I focused in on Luca Dean's accurate passing percentage. We didn't manage to muster as high an XG as the home side, and the shots on target issue is starting to worry me a little bit. It's taking us 3 attempts to hit the target once. Legia, much better percentage than that. Accurate passing was okay. We generated 4 big chances, and we had the bulk of the possession. But for Luca Dean, 31 completed passes out of 44 attempts for 70%. Later in the show, I'll show you how one of those failed passes led to one of the goals. It was not a great day for either Luca Dean or Callum Chambers in this one. Despite the fact that we definitely have more depth and more quality in our squad, there's no question, despite losing Buendia and Mings at the beginning of the season. When you start Callum Chambers, that's probably a sign that you still have some more work to do, and maybe you should have players other than 2 goalkeepers on your bench. And it's probably also a sign that Diego Carlos is farther away than maybe we had hoped. Now, imagine being Callum Chambers for a second as well, because I want to be empathetic here. We all think it's easy being a professional. This guy has not started since, Stevenage in January? And he's been deployed as a central midfielder, a center back. On this occasion, he plays right back. It's not as if he's going to go to Unai Emery and say, no thanks, Gaffer, I don't fancy it. But think about it for a minute, okay? He's being plunked in here for the first time in ever. Do we really expect a virtuoso performance out of him? No. and we certainly didn't get one. Callum Chambers was one of 5 changes from the side that beat Crystal Palace on the weekend. A first ever start for Clement Longley, and not surprising starts for Yuri Tielemans or John Duran. I think the only surprise in this was that Emi Martinez started over Robin Olsen, but we all know how much Emi Martinez wants to play in Europe. So this leads to the first issue, and it's a recurring one, and that is how much rotation is enough, or is it too much, and what are your competition priorities? And the first question can be answered with sports science. I've talked about this before, but load management dictates so much. You have 2 Premier League games on either side of a midweek Europa Conference League group game, of which there are 6. You have to manage your squad. I don't think Unai Emery was looking past Legia, but I absolutely do not think he was willing to sacrifice the game on Sunday to play his very strongest squad on Thursday. And based on how the game went, I think we can almost predict quite comfortably who's going to start at Stamford Bridge on Sunday. The other factor here is your players can't play 3 full games in a week. Your best team can't do that. If you don't play your squad, a couple of things happen. Number 1, they check out. And number 2, they're not as competitive in training, and they're not ready when an injury or a suspension comes along. Keeping in mind as well that after the Chelsea game on Sunday, there's a Carabao Cup game against Everton at home the following Wednesday. So managing the legs is so important here. And then it's up to the players to go out and deliver. On the positive side of the squad news, to see Jacob Ramsey back on the park was huge for us. And as many Aston Villa fans astutely observed, last year, our left side was extremely strong, and Jacob Ramsey was a huge reason for that. So was Alex Moreno. In fact, you could argue we relied too heavily on the left side, and Ramsey was a big part of that, especially at home. It was his proverbial breakout season. Well, this year, we've had contributions from the right side in terms of attacking production, thanks to Cash and Bailey, to a lesser extent Diaby, but we've had it from that side. So if Ramsey gets right back up to speed again, we will have balance and options, and perhaps maybe we could shift Zaniolo over to the right-hand side. Maybe Leon Bailey goes to the left once in a while in relief. There are just more options with Ramsey in the squad. And Ramsey had a fantastic opportunity late to equalize, and we cannot begrudge or complain about the fact that a guy who hasn't seen any action since the summertime maybe snatched at the chance a little bit and just got his angles wrong, because the goalkeeper was leaning heavily towards the near post and there was acres of room at the back post. A fully fit and a fully composed mid-season Jacob Ramsey would have taken a beat there, and he would have driven it towards the back post, and we might have earned a point out of it. Big issue, the crowd. And correct me if I'm wrong here in the comments, because I don't have the luxury of seeing it and hearing it in person and being able to compare it with other venues, like the people who go to every single game to represent Aston Villa, like Steve Goff or Mark Goodwin, guys like that, who I'd love to have on the show, by the way. But from the luxury of my sofa and my surround sound, which is pretty good, even Newcastle's 50,000 at St. James's Park didn't quite sound like this. You know, this would have been a hugely meaningful game for the Legia supporters. First game of the group against a Premier League opposition. It felt relentless. The singing never stopped. I did hear the Villa supporters, 1,700 of them, that's a lot. And yet they were drowned out a lot of the time. This is proper 12th man stuff there. And should it be a factor? Probably no. Did it surprise me? Yeah. Big moments are goals, because they were fun goals, weren't they? I mean, we saw another glimpse of why the sporting department is so high on Nicolo Zaniolo. He has a very heavy shot, and the ball is moving all over the place. And how about John Duran? Like a proper predator, a poacher, sniffed out the possibility of crumbs, was alive to it, and then contorts his body in the air to make sure he directs the ball perfectly into the seam, the corner of the goal. That's 4 goals in all competitions already for the Colombian. And despite the fact that he had a simply horrendous day defensively, fair play to Luca Dean for having a go. Yes, fortuitous deflection, but man, those look good, don't they, when they go flying into the top corner? And at that point at 2-2, I don't know about you, but I was starting to feel some Crystal Palace vibes, and I was starting to get cocky thinking, now we're going to get into this game, and now we're going to run away with it. It'll be a comfortable 4-2 in the end. Big issue. The forward pressing was really, really weak. And in my opinion, that was partially responsible for both of the first half goals allowed. On the first one, neither John McGinn nor John Duran do enough to slow down, prevent, or disrupt Legia from playing it out of the back. McGinn should really be curving his run to show the player onto his weaker foot, but he doesn't do that. And in my opinion, if you're not going to press aggressively, fine, then drop off. Because I don't know what the plan here was. It was neither nor. I don't know what the triggers are in terms of engaging the press, but Villa did none of it. They were just too passive. And then the ball completely splits us wide open. Boubacar Kamara is just too late. And this is what Ollie Watkins is really good at. He is good at deciding where he wants the ball to go, and everybody else works off of that. That's what John Duran has to work on. On the 2-1 goal, just look at Leon Bailey and how passive he is up front here. I mean, he allows his opponent, the fullback, to play the ball he wants by waving a lazy leg in the general direction of his opponent. If he takes 2 hard strides towards that player's preferred foot, guess what? Maybe that pass doesn't even get into midfield. Maybe Clément Lenglet wins that duel because of it, but he doesn't, because the pass is a clean pass. And Lenglet was late, as was Boubacar Kamara. Late. And boom, before you know it, it's 2-1. And it all starts with even reasonable pressure upfield. And this isn't necessarily about forward pressing, but it beautifully rounds out a simply miserable day for Luca Dean, who was not redeemed just because he scored the 2-2 goal. This moment preceded the 3-2 and game-winning goal. And I mentioned earlier, a 70% passing completion percentage for Dean is awful. And this is just sloppy. It's a little bit on the lazy side. And it just basically encapsulated everything that Villa was on Thursday. Now, Luca Dean, in the early part of the season, has been excellent. And I would dare say he has lived up to his salary. Yes, I said it. It was his ball to John Duran that led to the 1-1 goal against Palace. He has contributed so much in the attacking part of the game. Defensively, yeah, there's questions. And if he can keep playing that way and be that lethal in the front third, then he is worth every single penny. But this is now a difficult decision for Unai Emery because I don't think Alex Moreno is ready yet. And Dean went the full 90 minutes at Legia. Big issue number 3. Lethal Legia. Be honest now, when the Europa Conference League draw came out and you saw Legia Warsaw from the Polish league, you probably thought, well, this is going to be fairly straightforward because the Ekstraklassen is not one of the European top 5 leagues, and even a rotated Premier League side should be able to go there and compete comfortably and maybe even eke out a result. And then there was all this talk of Aston Villa as a favorite to win the entire competition, and it was a David versus Goliath matchup based on what the Legia manager was saying. I'm just wondering if some of the players started to believe that stuff a little bit, because I think we as supporters and pundits, and maybe a little bit of the players themselves, had a whiff of underestimation heading into this game. And perhaps breezing past Hibs the way we did also didn't help. It's one thing for Villa to leave acres of space in the midfield, and that's not just down to Boubacar Kamara. Yuri Tielemans has to answer to that as well. It's another to leave big gaps between our defenders as well, which we did. But the opposition still has to take advantage of those moments, and Legia did. They were super organized, extremely composed, and then they took their chances ruthlessly. And they were compact this way, they were compact that way. We didn't have a sniff in the second half. So fair play to them, because on Transfer Market, their entire squad value, 37 million euros. You know what ours is? 600 million euros. And this is why the game is not played on a spreadsheet. It's played on a pitch. And this group suddenly became very complicated because we are going to have to work very hard to try to finish first in the group and avoid a playoff against one of the Europa League clubs that drops down. Big issue number 2, away anxiety. And this is an issue that goes beyond just the Thursday result, because we've played 5 games on the road this season, 2 of those in the Europa Conference League. If you take away the wins at Burnley and Hibs, we've lost the other 3, and in those games we've conceded 11 times. Last year, during our run-in, when we were really starting to amass points and play well, yes, we lost at Manchester United and Wolves by a single goal, but we were competitive in those games. And we were also earning points at West Ham and Brentford. This year, although difficult venues for us, no question, St. James's Park, Newcastle, Anfield, and certainly this one was difficult. But there is a theme among them, and that is a soft underbelly. But what's bizarre about the start of this season is that we have been hit early and often. In fact, in those 3 losses, we have conceded inside the first 6 minutes all 3 times. Why is that? That, to me, is a mental issue, because I don't think it's the opponent saying, well, let's get after them early because they're vulnerable. It's too early in the season to judge that. Now you could say the opponents who are clever will go, we got to get after them early because they are mentally not with it early in the game. And that has to change fast. In fact, the biggest issue that has to be addressed on Sunday at Stamford Bridge is that we got to keep it clean and tidy and solid at the back for at least a half an hour. Of course, we'd love to do more, but we can't afford these early goals to then have to go and chase games. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Legia 3, Villa 2, diabolical defending. Oh my goodness. If you throw in the Crystal Palace goal conceded at the beginning of the second half on Saturday, the last 4 goals we've allowed have been utterly horrific. And you know that Crystal Palace goal started when Pau Torres just simply could not deal with Mateta. And there are themes between some of those 4 goals, like, for example, massive gaps between defenders or between defenders and midfielders, acres of space, the inability to shut off the supply line wide that plays the ball into those dangerous areas. I feel sorry for Clement Longley, who's walked into this. He's a stranger on this team. He's never played a game with Ezri Konsa in his life of meaning. Then you throw Callum Chambers into the mix, so now you got 2 of your back 4 basically being new. There are going to be hiccups, but that does not excuse hopelessly passive defending. And both Chambers and Dean were directly involved in all 3 goals, whether that was poor positioning, lack of awareness, not reacting quickly enough, or just being passive. And in Dean's case, playing a poor ball that led to the 3-2 goal in the first place. Now, I realize we have a very high potential player in Boubacar Kamara in our ranks, but for him to be successful and effective in our squad, he has to help shield the back 4. And as I showed you on the 1-0 goal, he was late to react to that through ball. Then he joins Callum Chambers to double the ball carrier in one of the worst examples of passive defending I've ever seen, well, at least until the 3-2 goal, and the ball gets played through. And then, as I showed you earlier on the 2-1 goal, well, again, late to react, gambles on a tackle, and loses. Boom. We're behind for a second time in the half. And then Dean, like Chambers and Kamara on the 1-0 goal, just kept backing off. At some point, you have to deal with the ball. and nobody tracks the runner. Callum Chambers is looking straight at this situation. Does he give a shout? I don't think so. He could also go over and just deal with it by covering, but he doesn't. It's one of those, I got him, you take him situations. Everybody's looking around at each other, wondering whose responsibility is what. I get you change 2 of your 4 back line, and it's not going to be perfect from the outset. But the whole team performance was poor. The weak press up front, massive gaps in midfield, and then this ridiculously apathetic style of defending that we showed. When things go wrong in a game, there are usually 3 answers, okay? A bad tactical approach, a vastly superior opponent, or terrible execution. The answer is 3. This one is entirely down to the players. Now, the silver lining after an indifferent performance like that is we get a chance to bounce back right away and redeem ourselves. And since Unai Emery has arrived to Villa Park, we have had this habit of bouncing back after poor performances. So we head to Stamford Bridge on Sunday against a Chelsea side that is once again kind of ravaged by injuries. But the marquee matchup for me, the thing that really intrigues me about this game is the potential for a Nicholas Jackson versus Pau Torres showdown. I mean, here are guys who were teammates recently. Villa, of course, linked with Jackson and every other Villarreal player for that matter. And those two will know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And Jackson, only 1 goal so far after 5 Premier League appearances, and he's taken a little bit of heat even because he's missed a couple of sitters in that time. So it is going to be fascinating to watch whether or not they're both on the field, and they probably will be, and whether or not they'll be working at each other over the course of those 90 minutes. And then, of course, who at the end of the day is going to come out as the winner of that 1v1 battle? Because that's exactly how I see it. Jackson straight up the middle, Pau Torres straight down the middle. One to watch. The win at Stamford Bridge last year, for me, was one of the results of the season because A, it kept the momentum going for us. B, it's a tough place to go, and traditionally we've struggled there. It was a clean sheet. We scored 2 great goals, and there's enough of the squad still around that they will remember it very well and hopefully have confidence going back there and trying to do it again. Squad for Chelsea has been overhauled again, which is crazy. And there's already pressure on Mauricio Pochettino, if you can believe it, but that's Todd Bowley's Chelsea. That's what he's built there now. So this is a very big and meaningful early season test for both teams, and I cannot wait. I really wanted Aston Villa to win on Thursday for my mate, Justin Hawthorne. Well, he's probably your mate too. I mean, he's the most connected guy in Birmingham. I know he's Mr. Birmingham, and he is Mr. Aston Villa as well. In fact, what an ambassador for Brummies everywhere because he's so generous. My trip to the UK with my wife would have been a completely different experience without Justin, because he got us into Villa Park. He got us into Bodymore for the U21s. We had one of the most amazing curry dinners on that final Friday night. And he's also sorted me out with a ton of kit. And on Thursday early morning, Justin lost his father-in-law, Keith. That's Beck's dad. And it has been a very difficult time. Well, anybody who has gone through a serious illness with a loved one knows it's horrendous. There's nothing worse. Losing somebody suddenly maybe is worse. So I really want to raise a glass to Keith and to Justin and Bex and the family today and wish them all the very best. And, you know, maybe you can go visit Justin and say hello at Ted's Baked Potatoes in Sutton Caulfield. Best baked potatoes or stuffed potatoes anywhere in the Midlands. Do something different for lunch for a change. Go say hi. Shake his hand. I'm sure he'll really appreciate it over the next couple of weeks. And, of course, and as always, and until Chelsea, up the mighty Villa.